Welcome to Every Child Belongs. Today, we have my friend Kari Baker as a guest. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. Carrie used to be a financial services executive and business owner, and now she's an author, speaker, and podcaster. And she is the founder of Kind Families, which stands for Kids with Invisible Neurological Differences, KIND. And she's host of the Kind Families podcast on Apple and Spotify. And Carrie became a kind mom, so a mom of a kid with invisible neurological differences, in 2014 when Brady was diagnosed with autism when he was just 3 years old. And so you started, one of the things I love, and as we were getting to know each other, you started Kind Families because you felt alone when
Absolutely.
Brady got
Yeah.
diagnosed. And so you wrote a book that we're going to talk about in a minute. That the foreword is by Brady, which is just, it just gives so much insight into your family and to him. But what did I leave out? What else do you want listeners to know about you?
Well, I really felt called to make this career change. I was 30 years in financial services, and I joke that I'm in version 2.0 of my life here because as my son began to grow and I experienced all of the ups and downs of being a kind mom, I started feeling really pulled away from that world, and I really started to have the heart for all of these parents that are out there who felt like I did when Brady was first diagnosed. And something that, we actually kept quiet for many years when Brady was first diagnosed because we just didn't know how other people would react to the diagnosis. And I didn't want to see other parents, number one, bypassing the whole process of getting an evaluation and understanding their child. But then number two, thinking that for some reason their child was born with something wrong with them, or that something was wrong with them as a parent for having a child that has any kind of neurodiversity like this. And that was the real revelation to me as I started to grow in my faith, as Brady started to get older, and I really started to see that there was such definite purpose and intent in the way that he was created. And I wanted everybody to understand that. And so sometimes when you're just buried in the minutia of therapies and evaluations and intake forms and all of those things, you can lose sight of this amazing kid that's sitting right in front of you, who God made this way so that he could bring, joy to other people and fulfill his own purpose in the world. And so it was a real heart change that had to happen.
You talked about Brady, and it's different. It's not wrong or it's bad. And if you wouldn't mind sharing, you had a conversation, because you and I were talking about this, because I have a grandson who's autistic, and I think he asked you something like, "Will I have autism in heaven?"
Yes, yeah.
And tell us about how you were. I know you had to take some time to think about it, but tell us how you responded to that, because I thought that was beautiful.
Well, I think it was a little inspiration from the Holy Spirit, because I was stumped when he first asked the question. But so he did. And this was only about a year or so ago. We were driving in the car, and he just out of the blue said, "Mom, will I still have autism when I'm in heaven?" And I had to really stop myself and think about the fact that, what is autism when it comes to who Brady is? And the way that I finally came around to answering him is that his autism is woven into every fabric of his being. The way his brain is wired is real, number one, and it is not only providing some challenges to him, but it is also giving us all of these awesome qualities that he has that he wouldn't have if autism weren't part of the picture. And so in a long story short, I basically said, "You know what, buddy? Yes, I do believe you will have autism in heaven, because you will be exactly the same person, heart and mind, that you are today. But what I do think will happen in heaven is all of these challenges that autism presents to you will be gone because you won't have trouble relating to others. You won't have trouble communicating your needs. There won't be a need to conform to some identity that maybe isn't your identity. When you get to heaven, you'll just get to be you in all of your glorious form. And I hope he took that to heart. As I mentioned, I wrote about this, and he kind of went right on to what TV show we were going to watch later that night, which teenagers tend to do. But I do believe that there is not one stitch of his being that was done in mistake, that was wrong. And our job is to recognize all of those positive aspects of our children and how they are wired and how they feel, and make sure that we are providing the best possible opportunity for them to be able to thrive in a world that isn't necessarily set up for them.
So how do we get more of heaven on earth as far as, in all the ways that you just mentioned, where he won't have difficulty communicating? And because I think it starts with us.
Absolutely. Well, Kim, the work that you're doing is huge. I mean, going into places in the community where people with neurodivergence have sometimes been misunderstood or belittled or kind of put in a corner because they might be disrupting what somebody believes is the greater goal of whatever that day is. And making people aware that sometimes just little shifts in our own behavior can make the world of difference for how a child receives information. So, and this is not easy. I mean, I will be honest with you, Kim, this morning I was struggling with that with my son and trying to get some math done and some homeschooling done, where I just wanted him to get it done. And I wanted him to get over this little mind block that he had and just get the work done. And I have to remind myself of it every day. And so I think it's the job of those who love and support these kids to help people become aware of how better to communicate with them, how to control our own assumptions of how they might behave in a certain situation, or whether their reaction to something constitutes disobedience or anything else. But really understanding that they are coming from a place of reacting to the way that their brain is processing information. And so, in all of the places that we are, I look back sometimes now and I think about the years that I kept Brady's diagnosis private and went into schools and didn't tell the other families what was going on. And I missed out on these opportunities to show these families, look at my awesome kid. Yes, he's got a brain that's wired a little differently than your child's, but look at all the amazing things that he can do. Look at how well he reads. Look at how he will get up on stage and grab a microphone away from anybody that happens to have one to perform, if he's got it in his heart. And so I think being honest about who our kids are and asking those people around us who might not understand to take a second and realize that our kids have all of these gifts and talents that they're going to miss out on, and their children are going to miss out on if they don't take the time to understand them.
Well, you talking about community. So I have your beautiful book right here.
Hi. Oh my gosh.
I read it and I'm rereading it. But one thing you said in there, Carrie, as far as community, and I've talked to you about this because this quote it stopped me in my tracks. It says, for the first few years after the diagnosis, John and I were swimming in the deep end of autism, but we did our best to make sure it was a private pool. Only our family, a few close friends, and his preschool teachers knew of Brady's actual diagnosis for the first few years. Mm-hmm. So you've already alluded to what you would do differently. Mm. How was it when you started telling people?
Well, interestingly, we wound up leaving the school situation with all of those other families and going to a school that was designated for kids with learning challenges. So it wasn't just autism, but kids with ADHD and dyslexia and all kinds of other sensory processing disorders. Basically, every kid under the kind umbrella, and it was there that all of a sudden in pickup line, parents were talking about what therapies their kids were doing and what medications they were on, and it was shocking to me, but. I was like, okay, so I guess we're going to talk about this now, but it gave me, all of a sudden, it was like somebody opened this little door for me where I was like, oh my gosh, it's okay to talk about this kind of stuff. And I'm not the only one thinking it and going through it. And so finding that community of people who were having that shared experience with me was really what I needed to be able to get myself more comfortable with even just the language around it. I mean, gosh, Kim, we didn't even say the word autism in the house for a couple of years. And for all kinds of reasons that were misconstrued based on our own fears and our own anxieties. But I actually had to get myself comfortable with saying the word autism. My son is autistic. My son has autism. Things that I had just clammed up for so many years. And so, getting myself comfortable with that language, I think only came through being around others who were speaking freely of it and finding that community. And I found another group of moms that we would meet for coffee and we would just talk about all the things. And I remember that first morning going and being able to speak freely and just crying the whole time I was sitting at this table with these women thinking they're never going to invite me to coffee again because I'm a basket. They're going to think I'm a basket case. But we were all there at one point. And so finding that language is so important. I think about it almost in my faith journey too. It was really hard for me to talk about Jesus and to be comfortable talking about my faith and the things I was going through until I was around a lot of other people who were totally comfortable talking about it. And that gave me that courage and that base and that foundation to really start speaking from the heart and not hold anything back. And it was the same with our experience with our son is, we needed to embrace who our son is and who he always will be, and addressing the challenges along the way. That's a big part of being a kind parent. But you can't focus so much on the challenges that you ignore all the blessings and letting other people experience those too. So
that's so insightful. And do you think that your discomfort or reluctance to share before, was it because not wanting to share the challenges that Brady was having, or have you able to identify the root of that?
I think it was a couple of things. When Brady was diagnosed with autism, I did not know a single person with autism. And so all I knew about autism were all the really scary things that you heard on TV and in news reports and things like that. And so part of that was my own fear that other people were going to react to my son with this limited knowledge base that I started with when Brady was diagnosed. Unfortunately, I think some of it was reinforced by some reactions of some other parents that did know or find out about Brady's diagnosis. And that was really unfortunate. In Brady's kindergarten class, there was a family who asked for their son to be moved to a different table because they had found out that Brady had autism. And I don't know what their frame of mind was, but so it had started with my own fear, and then it had been reinforced by a few kind of, strange situations that just kind of piled on top of it. And, none of it was shame about my son and who he is, but I do think there was also shame that, gosh, I'm this, I'm a businesswoman. I've been able to accomplish all of these things in my life. I'm a planner. Why didn't I come up with this kid that was going to fit into this typical mold that was going to fit in with all the other kids. So I had some personal shame too that I had to work through for me to get into the other side of that. I think it's a lot different now because there's just so much more awareness about neurodiversity and about autism. And I would hope that any mom that was at the beginning of their journey would not have that feeling of I'm the only one out there. I mean, just from the pure demographics of autism, it's 1 in 36 kids now. Kids with ADHD, it's 1 in 5 or 1 in 6. So their neurodiversity is everywhere, and so many parents are dealing with it. I would hope that isolation has lifted a little bit. But for me, that was really just, born of ignorance and fear and shame.
So what kind of responses, if this afternoon a friend tells me that their child has received a diagnosis, what kind of responses are helpful? What would have been words that would have encouraged you and maybe even given you the courage to share with even more people?
Oh gosh, what can we do to help Brady?
Yeah.
And we've had special people in our lives who have done that. And tell me, if there's a better way to approach him. We've had special teachers who have come to us when there's been a behavior that they haven't understood and have asked us, how can we, what is going through his mind? How can we better react when this comes up? One of the things that Brady is real sensitive to is negative criticism. So if a teacher was harsh, even just in tone of voice, but if they'd say, "Oh, Brady, you didn't do this on section 1," it would turn into tears and just this real sad moment that was very difficult to come out of. And so just being able to have someone say, how should I relate to Brady if there's something I need to correct? And we say, well, first of all, tell him what he's doing right. And then in the nicest voice you possibly can, then help him with how to correct what he's doing wrong. And then, I had somebody tell me once, Brady is the exact same kid before this diagnosis that he is after the diagnosis. And you've got to remember that as a parent, as well as hoping for other families to realize that too. So, a piece of paper or a realization, in my case, I took an online quiz and that was my wake up call that it was autism. So I didn't even have the piece of paper in my hand yet, but I knew in my whole heart that autism was what we were dealing with. But as soon as you know that, your kid doesn't all of a sudden become some different kid. He's the exact same kid before as after, but now you have a roadmap. Now at least have some guidelines and some barrier rails to be able to go and say, how can I best help my child for all of these different ways that autism presents itself? And it's different in every kid, and you have to figure out that for yourself, for your own child. But that then turns you into your child's biggest advocate. So that when those families do say, or those Sunday schools teachers say, how can I help Brady if he's in one of these moments? You are equipped to be able to help them through that.
Yeah. And the questions that you just gave us, Carrie, how do we help him? But then also, what is going on in his mind, or what is going through his mind? We could depend on the tone,
sure,
what is going on. But, but with a kind, empathetic tone, I've never thought of that question before. That's a great question, because what it does is then pointing out to you, Carrie, I don't know how he's processing. Help me better understand.
Yes. Those
are great questions. So Brady, how old is he now? 13?
He's 13. He's almost 14. So.
Yeah. So he, as we said, he wrote the foreword of your book.
Mm-hmm.
How is he feeling about his story becoming so public? Because you have gone from your private pool to you are out there in all the public pools.
Yeah.
You're speaking
I'm plopping into each pool. I know.
Right. That's right.
So that's the real blessing. This book was actually about 6 years in the making. And when I was first writing it, I was writing a lot of the hard stuff. And when my husband read it, he just said, Carrie, this sounds like it's hard to be Brady's mom. And so I quit writing for a long time because I didn't want anything out in the world that wasn't supportive and encouraging to Brady and all other kids like him. So as he grew and we started to see all the amazing things that he was doing, it started to take a turn into, gosh, okay, well, this is about some of the hard stuff that we went through, but it's also this amazing inspirational story about who Brady is becoming and how he's using those gifts and talents. And so, when we first started putting together the stories and the format, and I started giving chapter by chapter, not necessarily in order, to Brady to read, he loved it. And, the more I wrote and the more comfortable I got with his reaction to some of the stories, the more I gave him some of the harder things to read. And he just told me, he's like, Mom, now I get it better. I understand a little bit better what you were going through when I was first diagnosed and I was younger. And he loves the stories about all of his accomplishments and amazing things. And that's the whole last section of the book. So it was really cool, actually. Yesterday, Kim, we were talking about what we want to do going forward. And he said, Mom, I want to bring hope to people. I want to bring hope to people like me. And so he has come so far, not only in just accepting who he is. It doesn't mean he doesn't still struggle all the time. Like I said, we had another struggle this morning. But he accepts who he is. And not only that, he wants to reach out and help other people. And so when we talked about him writing the foreword, I will admit I'm a little bit of a control freak when it comes to projects that I do. And so I said, well, Brady, write something and we'll see what it sounds like. And he brought it, and it was the first draft. And with a few minor grammatical errors, it's exactly the way he brought it to me the first time. And it was such a perfect representation to me in his words of what it feels like to be a kind kid. And that was also his outreach to other kids that might need to understand that they can do amazing things. They are fearfully and wonderfully made. So he is fully on board. I run things by him. I do get his permission before I let things go out into the world, because some of those stories, like I said, are tough. And there are some stories that will not be told because I don't want Brady to have to deal with that. But he's read the book cover to cover and loves it. And he actually has passed it on to friends of his. And that's been kind of a shocker too. And that other teenagers that are neurotypical have actually read the book and loved it because I think they get him better. So I never thought of it as an outreach for kids to have a better heart for kind kids. But I had a gal at our church write this long letter to Brady and about how much she loved hearing about his life. And I don't know if she's neurodivergent as well, but it's been a really neat outcropping from what I expected God to do with this book. So
gosh, and it also confirms or affirms you in getting out of the private pool and getting into the public spaces. I mean, people need to hear, how are they going to understand what it's like to live with differences? But tell us more. So you're a kind family. You have a kid with invisible neurological disabilities. What about our differences? I'm sorry. What kind of for those who might not have friends who have a kid with a neurological difference, what are some of the challenges that those families are facing, and how might we better support them?
Oh gosh. Well, there's all kinds of things around schools and making sure your child is getting the accommodations that they need. I do think that even if you're not in a community where you know somebody personally that has a child with autism or a kind type of condition. Now there are all kinds of Facebook communities. There's a huge one. I'm in the Phoenix area, and if you just go on to a Facebook or an Instagram and look up Autism Moms, there are membership organizations you can join where you can ask questions. You can say, I'm in this area and I need an occupational therapist for my kid, or my kid is struggling in school at recess. Does anybody have any recommendations? So even if you feel like you're isolated from the standpoint of a person sitting right in front of you that's going through what you're going through, there are resources. There's another organization called We Are Brave Together that is a mom's support group that is nationwide, and they have in-person and online circles, connection circles you can join. I just encourage you that I would also say that, again, based on the sheer demographics, there is probably somebody in your community that is going through this. So if your child is in speech or in OT or in physical therapy or social communication groups, connect with those other parents that are using that same provider. Go to coffee with them. It will fill your bucket like you cannot imagine. And then find a way to get comfortable talking about who your kid really is. And don't be afraid to go to the Sunday school teacher or go to your child's teacher or to the resource person at your child's school. Go in your community and figure out the best way to introduce your kids to these social opportunities to feel like they belong to. Because you know what? If you're feeling alone, your kid is probably feeling alone too. So as much as you can find those opportunities to connect with other parents and children, whether it's online or in person, just find those opportunities. There are some connection tools on the Kind Families website too that people can go to and use. So wherever you're at, I would start with Facebook and Instagram. We Are Brave Together, and I can always answer questions too. If they go to the Kind Families website, I answer those questions personally. So
yeah, and the online forums or reaching out to you. I mean, you've made yourself accessible to so many people. That's a low risk start.
Sure. Yep.
Sharing your story, and you also said that. When you feel alone, often your child feels alone too. Have you seen also that now that you are more comfortable talking about it, that Brady is also more comfortable talking about it? Like we're modeling?
For sure. We've gone through an interesting arc with him because he was bullied at his last middle school, and we pulled him out last March. And he's in now a homeschool hybrid situation. It's 3 days a week. And he's made some good friends there, which is that's like the holy grail for autism moms. He's made a couple of really good friends. And I asked him at the beginning of the year if he was telling people that he had autism and ADHD. And he's like, no, Mom, I just, I want him to just like me for me. And I said, that's perfectly fine. It's your decision of who to tell and when to tell. Well, he came home the other day and he goes, Mom, I told my friends I have autism and ADHD. And I said, you did? And he goes, yeah. And I said, well, how did they respond? And he goes, well, 2 of them have autism too. So it was,
and they had not shared.
No. So, he's just, he's finding the time himself when he's comfortable in a group to share. And the fact that he was kind of affirmed by this group of kids was it was so special. So, we do still tell him, Brady, you've got to make the decision of when and who to tell. And we encourage you to kind of have a relationship with that person before you do that, so they can know who you are. But it's his decision to make. He's almost 14 years old, and I want him to be proud of who he is and never ashamed of the way his brain is wired. So,
Well, I think the way that you have communicated the story, Carrie, his story, your family's story, has helped. Your words have built him up, not
I
torn
hope
him
so.
down.
Yeah.
They have.
Yeah.
I mean, they have. That he has the confidence to tell people, because especially at his age, so many kids want to be like everybody else.
Yes.
And that he had the confidence to share a way that he's different,
Yeah.
that then turned out to be not so different from everybody.
Isn't that funny?
So you're talking about his friends. So I know that it's harder for Brady, but how does he find friendship and belonging?
So he struggles with that, and he had his favorite thing right now, I should back up, is movies. He wants to be a movie director when he grows up, and he is so granular about everything that goes into making a movie. You could not believe it. But he took that gift with this group, and they were all the kids at lunchtime were playing a game called Oregon Trail. I didn't play that when I was a kid, but I guess that's a thing that came out. But not old enough for me to know what it was, I guess. But anyway, so he told the kids, I'm going to write a screenplay and we're going to make a movie about the Oregon Trail. And so he got all of these kids invested in a project that was his absolute dream thing to do with a bunch of other kids his age. And I mean, they're helping him write the script, and they're talking about costumes and where they're going to film it. So the best thing that could happen with Brady is for him to be able to take one of these really specialized interests that he has and share it with other kids, and have those kids, be excited about it. So, when he was younger, if he found another kid that loves Star Wars, then that was a big help. Or it went to Marvel, and now it's DC Comics. So, he can speak so easily to the things that he's passionate about. If he meets another kid, I would tell you, that is an athlete, football player, soccer player, it is going to be very difficult for him to connect there. So being able to take the things that mean the most to him and find some way to relate that with another kid is the way that he's been able to make some neat friendships. And then there have just been some really special kids that we've been blessed to come across in our life. He has a best friend that he met in 5th grade who's neurotypical, and they are peas in a pod, and they have the best time together, and they are so sweet. And even though they don't go to school together anymore, they see each other every weekend. And there's just some people that I think God puts in our lives for very specific reasons, and we've been blessed with several of those. So
right, I'm so thankful for that for him. And really, isn't that what we all want?
Yes.
We want people to be interested in what we're interested about.
Yes.
And I mean, that's a good, I had to learn that some with my husband. Being interested, I mean, for real.
Exactly.
Being interested and showing interest in things that maybe aren't on my top 10 list of things to hear about or talk about. So that's great that he has friends like that. Okay, I want to do some rapid fire, Carrie. You ready? Rapid fire
boy.
questions.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you can do this. Describe yourself in 3 words.
Fun, musical, and caring.
I don't know about your musical abilities, but I will say you are very fun. Very fun. And you're caring. I've been the recipient of your care, so I'm very appreciative for that. If you could eat only one food, what would it be?
One dessert or regular food or anything. Dark chocolate.
Anything. Dark chocolate. Yes. I love you. Most recent book that you've enjoyed?
Gosh, could I say yours? It is the most recent book that I've read, and I totally enjoyed it. So people should be excited to read the words that you have to speak on this subject, Kim. So I loved it. And I was able to just highlight and relate to so many things in that book. So I loved it, Kim.
Oh, I appreciate you. That was not a plug. That was a total
I
surprise.
know. I
Because it's not
know.
really out. You were one of the early because I trust
I
you.
know.
I
I
trust you.
know. I know.
Yeah. Um, let's see. Who has had a big impact on your life?
My dad. My dad, probably most of all. He was always modeling just work ethic and integrity and care for his family, and he was always, and still is. He's still around. He lives 3 blocks away from me. If it tells you how close I am with my parents, so my mom and dad both, I love to pieces, and they've been great life examples for me and for
And
Brady.
your dad's also an author, so you're
He
following in his
is.
footsteps in
He
that way.
is.
That's super cool. Okay, finish this thought.
Okay.
Every child
Was made on purpose for a purpose.
Mm. Mm. You should be a writer. You're really good with words.
I might give it a
Carrie.
try.
I think you should. So, as we close, what encouragement would you like to give to the people who are listening?
Basically, what I just said, every single one of us was made on purpose for a purpose, and God doesn't make mistakes. And whether you're a mom or a dad wondering if you're parenting your child the way they need to be parented, you were put in place as that child's parent on purpose. Or whether you're looking at your child and you're struggling with some of the challenges that they're having, that child was made on purpose for a purpose. And if you will dig deep down with yourself and your children and find those gifts and talents that every single person on this planet has been imbued with, then that will lead you to your purpose. And it's going to be something glorious because you wouldn't be here if it wasn't.
Wow, that'll preach. Thank you, Carrie. That is an encouragement. I mean, not just for ourselves, but for the kids that we're looking at. If people want to get in touch with you or hear more about you, we've got your book, Finding Kind. How might they stay in touch with you?
Well, the easiest way is just through my website, kindfamilies.com. And you can order the book. The link to order the book is there. You can access the Kind Families podcast episodes on the website as well. And then if you just want to reach out to me with a question, just use the contact form on the website, and I'd be happy to respond. I respond to all of those questions myself personally. And then I do have a discount code available for your listeners, and it's Belong10. So if you access the book through my website, through the Kind Families website link, then enter Belong10 when you check out, and you'll get a 10% discount just for being one of Kim's listeners.
Thank you. That's so generous. Thank you, Carrie.
You bet.
Well, Carrie, thank you so much. And I mean, as I'm listening to you, the through line through all this is, besides what you said on the end, is we're all creating a purpose. Don't do it alone. Don't do it alone. So reach out to Carrie, reach out to others. And I'm just so thankful for your friendship, and I am thankful for you. And I appreciate those who are listening to Every Child Belongs, because we believe that.
Absolutely. Love you, Kim.
Carrie. Love you too.